All right, from problems facing the superintendent now to problems facing the Shelby County D.A. And this one I don't think he had any role in, but nonetheless he inherited, and that is the release of this information regarding 300 former employees dating back to 2014. The information on a spreadsheet had all their names, had all their birthdays, had all their social security numbers, and they're none too happy about it. A lot of the folks that were contacted by the Daily Memphian, in fact, Otis, are very upset that this was released. And you get it. And there really doesn't seem to be any explanation for how it happened, except that we know it wasn't someone with HR, it was somebody in the higher up ranks.
That's right.
At the DA's office.
That's right. And it's a terrible thing that happened here. The only saving grace behind it is that it didn't get into the general public. It only went to current and former DA employees. But one of them was absolutely correct. I think the onus is on the district attorney's office now to maybe pay for some credit checks over the next few years to make sure that a lot of that information has not been compromised. It's a terrible look. I think the DA needs to say a little bit more about it. I hadn't heard enough from him, but it's just another thing that allows somebody to just dump on the district attorney's office. Somebody. Your turn,
Chris. Sensitive topic for you, but if I'm a former prosecutor, and we know that they handle some sensitive cases, and not everybody likes former prosecutors because they may have put them in jail or something else. It gives me extra reason to be concerned about my privacy.
Yeah, I think that's the real worry, right? You don't want all the personal information of your former prosecutors out there. Thankfully, it did not go to the general public, but we know how offices are. We know how information
is still floating out there. I'd still be concerned.
Yeah, anything can happen.
And you guys know that personally, I think the world of General Mulroy. I don't try to dump on him too much, but does a week go by where we don't have more bad news out of this office? I'm being frank with you.
Yeah.
Does a week go by? And here's the most important question. Are we safer than we were 2 years ago? Now, I know that's not all on him. Maybe it's not even a majority on him. We have problems in the judiciary. We have problems with judicial commissioners. We have a problem with criminal laws. A lot of people would say the state legislature has passed some laws that have really impacted crime here in Memphis in a negative way. But are we safer than we were 2 years ago?
Well, the stats would suggest we are somewhat, at least from last year. There have been some double-digit declines in violent crime in a lot of those different categories. Property crimes are way down, thank goodness, car thefts and all that stuff, but still not down nearly enough. There's still a lot. Instead of, 40 break-ins a day, we're having 35 or whatever. It's still a lot. So, yeah, good point.
If I were a Republican, if I were one of those people who like to dump on Steve, I would dump on him with this. I would make a lot of noise about it, even though it's really not that significant in terms of importance. But it's just unfortunate that that kind of thing could creep up and just cause more noise and give more ammunition to those who don't like D.A. Mulroy.
Right. Let me respond to that. Are we safer? And Richard touched on this. If you believe the reports from the Crime Commission and the Public Safety Institute at the University of Memphis, they say, yes, it's down from last year, but it's still way up from, say, like 2006. I had this conversation with a bunch of seniors the other night at the village of Germantown. Very nice folks over there who were talking about crime. So the crime has been going up precipitously since 2006. Steve Mulroy took office in 2022. So I just don't think it's fair to continue to blame him for the crime problem when we've had even Bill Gibbons was the DA during that period of time. And then, of course, Amy Wyrick was the DA. So, I mean, we shouldn't just pick and choose who we're going to complain about crime, depending on who's in the district attorney's office.
Well, which brings up the Republican District Attorney General from District 28, Frederick Agee, who is a Republican, rose to Mulroy's defense this past week. He really questions these attempts to oust him. In fact, he's representing Mulroy in that case, saying that a lot of what Mulroy's having to deal with predate his election to the 2022 election. And he also added that it's reckless and more, this attempt to oust him is reckless and more in line with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un's dictates than George Washington and Thomas Jefferson's democracy. You have the floor.
I just think that quote's incredibly silly. You know the seriousness of the argument has a inverse relationship to the number of times people reference Nazism or communism, and that's a great example of that. That's just a silly quote. I'm not familiar with this gentleman. I understand that he recently was reelected as a Republican. I know he's been dealing with his own issues in his district. I understand that his opinion is a tiny, tiny minority within the association of district attorneys in the state. But let me make two counterpoints. One, I recognize, and it's a really good thing, and I don't want to be alarmist about crime because this is my community and I'm proud of it, but it's a good thing that crime is down compared to last year. But that's like a person who weighs 800 pounds saying, I lost 50 pounds last year. We're headed in the right direction, but we still have a very serious problem. I also agree with you that it's unfair to ascribe all of these problems to the district attorney's office. But we have seen time and again, whether it's not pushing for more stringent bail, whether it's signing a unilateral agreement with the Department of Justice about aggravated prostitution prosecutions, whether it's now, we walked it back, but talking about particular deferral programs for people who committed gun crimes as long as their previous felonies were nonviolent. I mean, this stuff affects what people are feeling out there. It affects crime rates. And I think he's responsible for some of it, and I think we need to have more vigorous prosecution.
We're in overtime on this topic, but I'll let you have the last word.
Call me when you get ready to run for DA.
I'm not that kind of attorney. And again, it's not personal. I like D.A. Mulroy. I think he's well-intentioned. I think he's a good man, but we really need to redouble our efforts. And stuff like this is a total distraction.
But we also need to talk about what the legislature does with the proliferation of guns in our community. Nobody on the Republican side ever talks about that when you're saying that D.A. Mulroy is soft on crime.
I think that's a fair point. I think we can have that conversation.
Okay, all right.